Before we start, there was a very important question coming from Toronto over here.
Yeah. Yes.
I was reading a book by Maimonides, and the whole point of this, what I got, was doing the mitzvah brought you closer to God. That was the way to communicate with God, through the mitzvah. And I sort of got that from you last time, but I'm not sure I did.
What did they say that the point of the mitzvah is to
communicate with God, to be close to God? You do the mitzvah. And I think one of the last things you said last time was to communicate with God.
Commune and communicate, two different things. Yeah. Communion becomes one.
Right.
To become one.
Yeah.
Commune, in that sense. But it's what I said is that generally it's presented as a path towards God, or a path towards cleaning yourself up, as a way to get somewhere. Whereas here in Tanya, it's not a way to get somewhere. It's you are there already. At the time of doing a mitzvah, at the time of learning Torah, at the time that of tefillah, you were there already. Yes, it is refining you, it's elevating you, it's refining your world as well. But it's not about the long journey, it's about the moment at that point.
So do you have a cheat sheet of how we commune with God?
Yeah, the hack.
That's the hack.
The hack. You're hacking the cosmos to be there now. Okay, there was somebody named Oziel who was signing in and disappeared. You get zapped just like that. Okay. And Ari's mother is here, so we can start. So let me see. So page 87. So what we were saying last week is that what is Torah? What is defining what is Torah? Torah is described as many things. The word literally means Torah. What does it literally mean?
What is the question?
Torah, the word Torah, what does it literally mean?
Teaching, learn.
Yeah. It comes like from seeing, ora, to show. Like you could call a teacher in a school a mora or mora means somebody who shows you. So a guide.
Torah literally would be to see.
Well, no, it means Torah means a showing, an instruction, a guiding. So Torah means it's guiding you, showing you what you're supposed to do. So that's why you see Torah is light, because light shows you what's there. You can be in a dark room.
Or to see.
Yeah, but it's showing, it's making you that you are able to see, right? You need a guide on a tour because you're standing there on the top of the mountain, you don't know what should I look, and the guide says, well, look over there. And if you look over there, you'll see there's a canyon and there's a river down there. Oh, I didn't see that. That's what the guide is doing, telling you where you should look. But an even greater guide is the one who turns on the lights for you. It was dark, so when you're in a dark room, you don't know what's this, you're touching all sorts of things. You don't know if this is dangerous or is it healthy or harmful or good, beneficial. You turn on the lights. Get that out of me. This, go for this, not for that. So Torah turns on the lights for you. Know what's good and what's bad. Because you can see. That's what Torah is. So Torah is generally described the way people intuitively understand it is it's a wisdom. It's wisdom, you know. Oh yeah, there's lots of wisdom out there. There's lots of received wisdom, you know. China has wisdom, India has wisdom, and go to Africa, wisdom. So saying here that it's not really what Torah is. As we're saying, the Zohar says the Torah and God are completely one. So wisdom is, so this is a completely different kind of wisdom. But because none of us will say about ourselves, we might say that we have gained some wisdom. How do you go through life without gaining some wisdom? But can I say that my wisdom and I are one? These are things that I gained through life. Maybe, in some way I intuitively knew these things, and the life experience articulated it for me, but I still wouldn't really be able to tell you this wisdom unless I had gained it through experience. Now, so the wisdom is not me. If you have all the wisdom I have to teach, which would take me maybe 7.5 minutes, okay? But if I could give you all that wisdom, would you have me? Even if it was a very wise sage who would take you several years, 40 years, you have him.
But Plato says, I'm the wisest of men, but there's one thing that I know is that
I know nothing.
He said that?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he should know, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I use it.
There's a quote usually named Yedir Bedersi. It's Provence, I guess, around the 13th century. Said, Tachlit Yedir Shelo Nedach. The ultimate knowledge is that we don't know.
That's what tells me that when I think something is true, it's when somebody with wisdom says it here, and somebody in another world with wisdom says it there, and it's the same thing being said.
That's truth when you see something works everywhere, from every frame of reference. Yeah. How do we know? Because you need to know every point and frame of reference in the universe to know something. So that's why, as Karl Popper said, accordingly, scientifically, you should never be able to say you know something is 100% true.
Karl Popper?
Karl Popper, yeah. You can only, but one thing we know is it's not science unless you can falsify it. But if somebody comes and tells you, I know logically and rationally 100% that this is true, it's an oxymoron, it can't be. But what we have in the neshama, we know something is true. You know something is true, not true rationally, because you are one with it. If that's what you are, so that for you is absolute truth. But what are you one with? How can you say we're one with anything? Anyways, back to God and his wisdom. God doesn't gain his wisdom through experience. It's not like he went through a lot of things and talked to a lot of people and came up with how to create a world. No. His wisdom comes from him. It has no other source. It only comes from him. And what is that wisdom about? It's not about anything, because he has the wisdom before he starts creating anything. So the wisdom is not about anything except for him.
His wisdom is him.
Yeah. So, but he's not wisdom. You can't define God as being wisdom, just like you can't define God as being love or any of these things, because then you'll say that God is this. Then there's two things. There's him and this. No. And love is not a complete oneness. It's love and not the opposite of love. Wisdom is wisdom, but it's not understanding. So you can't say God is any of these things, even wisdom. Wisdom comes very close to being a real oneness. Aristotle thought there's no greater oneness than wisdom, but the ultimate wisdom, he thought that God is wisdom. That's what he is. So the Maharal of Prague writes at length about this, that you can't say God is wisdom, because that's already giving him some sort of description. It's not a complete oneness. But his wisdom is one with him, because it's him knowing about himself. That's all it is. Now, so when you have his wisdom, you have him. And that's what Torah is. It's his wisdom. So when you have Torah, you have him. So this is a completely different type of wisdom. Completely different kind of wisdom. It's not wisdom as we generally know it. a wisdom that a person gained through experience. This is wisdom from which all experience comes. So it's not, this is how most people would understand the Torah wisdom. God created a world. He put people in the world. Now, they start making a big mess. They didn't know how to go. There's some big problems over here. Okay, we need a solution to the problem. Torah will tell them, follow these instructions. It won't be such a big mess anymore. No. And Torah is not a solution to a problem. The problem is there, arises from Torah itself. The whole world comes from Torah. So the Talmud says that, that's a medrash, that God looked in the Torah and created the world. So it's like before you start building your mansion, you make an architectural design of it. And you look in the design, you see what to build it. God looks in the Torah, creates a world. But is that the Torah, the design? No, but Torah contains that as well. So first of all, Torah precedes them. So if there's a problem, it comes out of the Torah, and you'll be able to find that in the Torah. If there's a solution, it'll also be there in Torah. Whatever is going to be in the world is going to be in Torah, because that's where it begins. That's where it comes from. But even that is not what the Torah is. It just happens that's also in the Torah. But Torah is really God himself in wisdom, coming in this package of wisdom. My father-in-law, Oliver Shalom, he was an engineer in Argentina. And in the 1960s, he brought the first computers to Argentina. He used it on the railroad. He was working for the railroad. And then they brought it into social services, all these other things. They started on the railroad, brought computers there. And it was a big fight for him. He was a young man then, as a young man trying to get it. Nobody understood him. But he was fascinated with computers. So then, I guess it must have been in 1970 or so, Rabbi Baumgarten, Rabbeinu Baumgarten arranged for him to have a private audience with the Rebbe, with Rabbi Baumgarten himself interpreting back and forth from Yiddish into Spanish. And my father-in-law says once in a while, Rabbi Baumgarten would start translating and the Rebbe would correct him. So anyways, so he had his questions prepared. He's going to stump the Rebbe. He has his question prepared. So the first question he asks says, Rabbeinu Baumgarten here tells me that everything that's in the world, you can find it in the Torah. The Rebbe says, yes, it's correct. So he says, so where are computers in the Torah? He said, it's not the Rebbe. So the Rebbe, he said, I remember him telling me this. He said, the Rebbe answered me as though he had prepared his answer in advance. So immediately, like I was expecting that question, here's the answer. The Rebbe immediately answered him to fill in. To fill in computers? So the Rebbe said to him, what's a computer? Come into a room with a computer. I mean, in those days, it's a whole room, right? What do you see there? You see there's a display. We have displays before, televisions, monitors. You see there's a typewriter, nothing new. So the big tapes going around. Well, it makes calculations. We have calculators. What is new? So all that's new is that all these devices are connected together. But the connections are through cables. The cables are behind the walls and under the floor. And they're connecting all these devices together, that all these devices will work as one. And that's what makes them so powerful. It's what later we called connectivity. He says, so now the Rebbe says, now look at yourself. You have a mind, and you have a heart, and you have your action, your hands, your feet, but they're all disconnected. Your brain is in one place. Your heart feels something else. And your hands, who knows what they're doing? So you put on tefillin. Tefillin connects everything through cables, from the brain down to the heart, from the heart and down to the hand. And now everything is connected, and they all work as one. So you put on tefillin in the morning, first thing. And from that point on, everything that you do has one purpose. It's all to serve God. It's to your brain and your heart, your hand, all going in one direction. And the Rebbe went on, he said, same thing amongst Jews. You have a Jew here in America, you have a Jew in Argentina, you have a Jew in Russia, you have a Jew in Israel. Each one puts on tefillin. Right? A Jew putting on tefillin in Argentina strengthens the soldier in the Israeli army in Israel protecting Israel, because connects all of the Jews together. That's all. So there you have Torah, tefillin, and Torah. Everything that you can find in the world, it's there in Torah first. Not that you can look in the Torah and invent new inventions and tell what's going to be invented. No, but once it's there, you can find what it is, because Torah is God's wisdom. Everything comes from there. Okay, now he brings up a problem. The infinite and accessible God. How is that possible? It says like this: true God is called infinite. His greatness is unfathomable, and no thought can grasp anything about him. Right? There's no way you can grasp God in your mind, understand God. You would sit and meditate for your entire life. Not just that you won't grasp him, you won't get any closer to grasping him. Because if it's infinitely distant, that means like, okay, so let's say something's infinitely far away from me, and I take 5 steps towards it. Did I get any closer? I'm still infinitely distant. So if I take many steps in understanding God, did I get any closer to understanding? No. Now this is very important. If so, say you have a 4-year-old who's thinking about God, and you have an 80-year-old who's been thinking his whole life about God. Which one has a better grasp of God?
80.
What?
Think the older.
You would think.
Yeah.
But if he's infinite,
So probably the child.
I would think the child, you know why? Because the 80-year-old, as much as he'll try to say that he doesn't, he really thinks that he does understand something. The 4-year-old just knows he's God. That's it. I talked to him. He's not trying to. The 8-year-old, you're going to ask him. He say, "Well, God is this and that." He's infinite. He's the 4-year-old. Well, he's God. I talked to him. He's my God. That's all. He is. He doesn't have any descriptions weighing him down. So that's the point of saying he's unfathomable. So the same is true of his will and wisdom. If we say his will and wisdom is one with him, so that's also the same. So you can never be able to grasp his wisdom as well. And here we're saying that we're grasping his wisdom and his will. How is that possible? The same is true of his will and wisdom. It's written, there are no means to understand him. It's also written, it literally means, if you will search for God, are you going to understand? Are you going to find him? It's also written, if you will seek to fathom God, will you achieve? And it's written, my thoughts are not your thoughts. So as much as you think, you're not going to grasp my thoughts. You're not going to get closer because completely different thoughts. So we add it in, right? But what the problem is? This presents a quandary. If God provides you with authentic, infinite wisdom, it should be impossible for you to grasp. So we shouldn't be able to grasp anything of Torah. If God provides you wisdom that you can grasp, it must be that it's not his authentic, infinite wisdom. You know, the story when Groucho Marx, was it, you know, the social club there, where was it? In Los Angeles, like next to Beverly Hills, no Jews allowed. So the Jews started their own social club, which became a bigger club, right? So they asked Groucho Marx why he was not a member. And he said, any club that's willing to take me is not worth joining. So any wisdom that you're capable of grasping, it couldn't be God. That's what he's saying. Nonetheless, he has provided you that infinite wisdom you're grasping every time you learn Torah. How's that possible? So it was in reference to this paradox that our sages said, in that very place where you find God's greatness, there you will find his humility, descending to the lowest places. So think about it. The very place you find his greatness, there you find his humility. And have many different meanings, many different meanings. I'll give you one example. So it's actually a parable that's given for this. You walk into an art gallery, and three men are sitting on a bench, and they're staring at this beautiful masterpiece. One of them is, wow, it's so fantastic. Oh, so he's so excited about it. The second one is like this. And the third one is just mesmerized, sitting perfectly still. Okay, so you have the audacity to go over the first one and say, so what's so exciting? What's so amazing about this? He says, oh, look, the pretty bird over there on the tree, and it's so nice and colorful and gorgeous, and the bay, that's so realistic, it's so nice, it's so meaningful. Okay, I see, yes, true. So yeah, I asked the second guy, so why are you so dismissive? What's the problem? He says, listen, he thinks it's a beautiful painting. I know the artist. The artist is a brilliant man. He's a deep, wise man. He's a philosopher. And he paints a stupid bird on a tree. What's that all about? Oh, yeah, you have a point. You have a good point. So you mesmerized. You tap on his back. Mesmerized. He's not moving. Hey, man, excuse me. Hello. Finally get his attention. He says, why are you so mesmerized? Don't you know the artist is a great philosopher? Why it's silly for him to paint birds on the tree? What's going on? I know the artist very, very well. Very, very deep man. I know his thoughts. I know him. And it's amazing how he can compress all of his wisdom into a simple painting of a bird on a tree. So, see, that's greater wisdom. You have one professor who was very, very brilliant, but nobody could understand him. They say Niels Bohr, a very brilliant physicist, but as soon as he would start speaking, everybody would fall asleep. There's very few journalists ever were able to cover any of his talks because they all fell asleep during the talks. So, and you have other people who are very brilliant, and they're able to teach even undergrads. Dr. Rosenblum told me, we asked the Rebbe something about Schrodinger. When Schrodinger, the Rebbe said, I enjoyed his classes very much. He taught undergrad students at the University of Berlin. And then you have others who are so brilliant, so wise, they can explain deep, deep ideas to preschool. Do you know anybody like that? Not really. Dr. Seuss. Okay, Dr. Seuss.
Well, you brought that up last week.
Yeah.
So just a question. So like, is it futile? Like one question I've always thought of is like, I get God created all this, but what came before that? Like how did God even come to his own existence? Is that like a futile exercise?
Why did God decide to create a world?
No, but no. But I get that, but like
You do? Okay.
No.
Later you'll explain.
No, like I accept that, but then like how did God even come to existence? Like there, like just pops.
Okay.
Is that like
Asking the question, who created God?
right or like
That's your question.
And I guess the answer that I'm saying is like it's not even worth trying to understand. That's like
No. I have an article.
Okay.
We call God we are contingent existence. We're contingent on him wanting us to be. And he's not contingent. So we see he's mechuyav hametziut, which doesn't translate well as a necessary existence, doesn't really work. But he's not contingent. So there was one of the Arabic philosophers, and they call him the second Aristotle, Ibn Rushd. He's really Persian, Iranian, Ibn Rushd. So he gave an explanation of Rambam and really elaborates well. You can read there in the article. What does it mean that an absolute existence? Well, I'll give you just a story that brings it across. So, if you've ever been at the Kotel, the Kaisel, the Western Wall, especially not so much now, but say 10 years ago, there was this Gil Locks is there. Gil Locks used to be a guru. called him the guru of Central Park. And he had a whole following, sat staring at the tip of his nose for who knows how many years. Anyways, and he ended up being a chassid. So then he moved to Israel, went to the war, and he grabbed people and wrapped tefillin on them. So, and he was very good at it. Because if you would say, but I started arguing with him, he would tell about all the other things that he's done, which is absolutely everything. You couldn't answer back. So anyways, he stops a group of American tourists, and they're there with an Israeli tour guide. And he tells them they put on tefillin. So they look to their tour guide. And the tour guide says, well, you can put on tefillin, but I don't believe in God, so I'm going to do it. So Gil goes straight for the tour guide. What are you talking about? Says, that's ridiculous, he says. No, it's not ridiculous. So only in Hebrew can you say this. You talk about God when you're talking about God in Kabbalah, and Israelis know this, you say Havaya. And Havaya literally means being, existence. So he tells tells the tour guide, tell me, she'ein Havaya la Havaya, which means being is not, existence doesn't exist. Now, that really summarizes it all. Is. You can't say is not. So everything, not in terms of what something is, but just isness. There's an isness. Everything just is. So even if there aren't any things, there's is. And that's God. And is that's beyond time, beyond having to, not an is of not a something. There's no thing there. You say something is. There is something. We're not talking about something that is. We're talking about just is. That's why the Rambam says in the Moreh Nevuchim guide text, he says that you can't say that God is. Because then there's two things. There's him and that he is. He says it's not, Rambam says, yeah. Well, that when you say he was, is, and will be, but we're not saying that there is a God who was, is, and will be. No, he is, was, is, will be. So there's a difference. It's not that there's a certain entity that is. Yeah. It's just pure isness. It's the best way of saying it. But even that doesn't do it service. But you can read the article, which also doesn't do it service, but it's there. I think it's called Who Created God or Who Made God. One of the
You wrote that?
Yeah, I mean, just maybe 2 years ago. So I still don't disagree with it. I think it's about 2 years before I did. I take a look. And because I looked at the Wikipedia article on the thing, it's a bunch of nonsense over there. And nobody gives like a simple answers. So I wrote the article and asked somebody to put it to Wikipedia. the reference. Okay. So you can go to Wikipedia as well. I hope it's still there. Okay, so that was totally off field, off track, everything. But now, at least it gives you a better understanding. Now, how are we going to understand and commune with isness or is? Right? It's ridiculous. So we say, well, this is what's so great about God, that he can take all of himself and put it in packages where we're able to grasp it. And so, well, that's not possible. Yeah, but he's God, so he can do that. That's what it means. He's infinite. True infiniteness means he can put himself anywhere. Right? So he can teach grad students, undergrad, high school, preschool, anywhere. And then as soon as anybody's willing to listen, he's got a brain, right? He can come to them. So he's everywhere. In fact, he can teach an amoeba. Why not? So God compressed his infinite, page 89. So God compressed his infinite desire and wisdom into a finite number, 613 mitzvahs of the Torah, into the rules for each of those mitzvahs, not just the 613 mitzvahs, all the halachas. Like this halacha, so many halacha for every mitzvah, right? Each one of those halacha, you're going to learn that halacha, you have God. Into the combinations of letters that make up the Torah, prophets and scriptures. So why are these letters going this way and not in that way? That's God. He put himself in this order of letters. When you're learning this order of letters, this order of words, and reading that, you have him. And into the interpretations of these texts. So you're reading, what does Rashi say on this? What does Ramban have to say about this? What does Rab David Kimchi have to say about this? All the great commentaries. That also is God. It's coming through this particular sage or that particular sage, but it's still God. So the interpretations of these texts as they're delivered to us in the anecdotes and parables, you're reading a nice little parable. It's God. You have some parables in the Talmud about a gigantic fish that was so big, they thought it was an island, and they got off the boat, and they got onto this island, and they started making a fire and cooking their food, and then it started swimming. And you're reading this, it's just totally like the biggest big fish story there ever was. No, this is God coming to you in an anecdote, in a parable, as told in the midrashim of our sages. This is another. You see all these subtle things. Because you're going to say, well, Torah is like God spoke to Moses. That's Torah. These things, these are the sages saying this human interpretation. On that, take a step back and say, there's the last of the prophets was Malachi. And he starts off his prophecy by saying, this is the word, the burden of God in the hand of Malachi. So the rabbi said, wait, he should have said in the mouth of Malachi. It's not his hand, is it not? Why did he say in his hand? Because he's been carrying it since Mount Sinai. He received it there, which is 1,000 years before he lived. Everything that every prophet ever said, they received there at Mount Sinai. And not only every prophet, but every sage. It was there, given to the Mount Sinai. And God waited for a certain time when the world would be ready for it. And then this person was born, and he matured, and he spoke what he heard at Mount Sinai. And that's why, you see, at Mount Sinai, it doesn't say that God spoke and that's it. It says, Kol Gadol Lo Yasaf. It was a great voice that never finished. Lo Yasaf, it never ended. So that giving of the Torah continues in every generation. How does it continue? Somebody's sitting and learning Torah, trying to understand. And there's a problem that nobody else saw before. And he sees this problem. And then he's trying so hard for days and days. It must be like this. And he gives his interpretation. Torah was just given at that moment. He gave it. So everything that's there, if it's been accepted by the Jewish people as Torah, that means it was given at Mount Sinai. I was only received 3,000 years later. That's all received at Mount Sinai. Okay, so all of those things all came through started off as God himself compressed. He squeezed himself into a little story that you can tell a little kid. He did this so that your entire neshama, ruach, or nefesh, as they are within a human body, could mentally grasp his infinite wisdom and his desire. So it's what we call holistic learning. All of you can be learning, not just one part of you. Every part of you can be engaged in this learning. You can grasp them as they're invested with all these mitzvahs, texts, commentaries, and stories, and you can fulfill whatever is practical in action, speech, and thought. So it also means that every person would also be able to understand, which is an amazing thing. So did I speak about this last week? The little child is learning about Yaakov and Esav. He asked him, what's the story of Yaakov and Esav? So there's two brothers and they're always fighting. They're twins and they're always fighting. One is Harry and one is learning. And they always fight. And he said, right, nice look. He doesn't really understand the whole story. I'll tell you the whole story. And you start explaining what it's really all about. And meanwhile, there's an old sage sitting there and he says, you think you understand? I'll tell you how it is according to the Kabbalah, the real story, who is really I. So really all of them have it correct. The child has it wrong. He has all of the Torah, all of it, in his simple understanding of the story, of the story. The only thing is now he's 5 years old. If he still understands it that way when he's 20 years old, he no longer has the whole Torah. Because it has to be in a way that all of him is understanding. And he's not using all of his mature intellect to understand it. He no longer has it. He has to, the bottle has to be full for him to be really grasping. All of you has to be grasping it. So this way your divine soul can invest yourself, all her 10 faculties, within these 3 clothes of Torah, thoughts, words, and actions that are God's infinite wisdom and desire. Yeah.
Maybe my bottle is not full enough. How do I understand this? That my neshama, ruach, and nefesh can mentally grasp something. Mentally is in my head, not in my soul. Is it? How do I understand this?
The soul is as they are within the human body. See those words? We actually added them in. It says, "Kol neshama ruach v'nefesh shebeguf ha'adam," within the body of a person. Talking about as the nefesh, ruach, neshama are now playing out in the body. There in the body, they have to use your 2.5 pounds of meat up there to understand. But they can also use your heart. I don't know how much is a heart, my 1.5 pounds, whatever it is. And not only that, but every limb of your body to do a mitzvah. And with each of those things, you're grasping God in each of these things. So it's not just in even mentally grasping. It's also grasping in terms of when you're holding Arba Minim, Lulav, Hadas, Aravot, and the Etrog, and you're holding them in your hands, you're holding God in your hands. In that action, if it weren't Sukkot, you wouldn't be able to. But by holding them together, this act of holding them together is holding God. If somebody was not Jewish and holding them, they wouldn't be. But for you, it's a mitzvah. So this activity of doing this, it's not holding God. You're grasping God. You're eating a matzah. In that act of eating the matzah, you're ingesting God. This is divine energy. You're helping the little old lady with her groceries. You're holding God. I remember I went to blow shofar many years ago. An article about this one too. I blow shofar. I don't think that it had been a year that I went blowing shofar in Rosh Hashanah and somebody didn't break down in tears. I feel so lousy. Go at Rosh Hashanah, all this work just to get somebody to break down in tears. But always somebody breaks down. So this was one of the first time I come to this senior citizens home. And there's a lady there who's very interested, really wants to hear the shofar. And when I start blowing the shofar, she starts crying, "Oi, mein süßer Gott. Oi, mein süßer Gott." And the way it was like she just met her long-lost husband, who was also her father and also her child. And she's embracing all of them and holding them. It was like, it's so hard to describe. Mein süßer Gott, mein Tata. So that's how a Jew feels when you're doing a mitzvah. It's going to be a simple mitzvah. You're embracing God. So before we get to this embracing God, that is why the Torah is compared to water. You've probably heard many times the Torah being compared to light. But you know, it's not light. Water, what's the difference? Just as water will always descend from a higher place to a lower one. That's where water wants to go. You put water You put water in a nice, comfortable place high up there and ask water, is everything okay? Well, I'd rather go lower, you know. And proof is you make a little hole there, it'll go lower. Is that okay? Can I get any lower? So that's water. The only way it's not to go lower. So the Torah descended from the place of its glory as to God's desire and wisdom, as Torah is perfectly one with God who cannot be grasped by any thought at all. It traveled from that place, descending and secreting itself into each level through which it passed. So tiers upon tiers of multiple realities in a chain of descent through all the spiritual worlds until it became invested within physical matters and concerns of this world, which is what virtually all of the mitzvahs of the Torah and its rules are about. So the Torah, you ask the Torah, you're there in your place of glory, one with God. Is everything okay? No, I want to go lower. Okay, we'll take you down to the world of the angels. There's got to be lower than this. Can you find something lower for me? So it wants to go. In other words, there was a place of its glory, a place of glory, but it's not its real place. Its real place is down here. That's where Torah really belongs. So if you're really looking for Torah, it has to be in the real world, which explains many halachas. Often you have a discussion in the Gemara and Talmud, and it's discussing what the halacha should be, and you'll have an answer. For example, Rabbi Akiva says, "Well, go out and see what the people do." Or you have a general principle. You can't make a legislation that the people will not be able to keep. So, for example, there were certain legislation made at a certain time that you could not eat bread made by a non-Jew, and you could not have olive oil that was pressed by a non-Jew, and you cannot drink wine that was made by non-Jews, even if it was not used for idolatrous purposes. So then later, the next generation, they went out and looked and saw that Jews were still using oil pressed by non-Jews. And in most communities, they were eating bread that was baked by non-Jews. The only one that everybody had accepted was they weren't having wine, non-Jews. So the rabbi said, so the law about olive oil was as though it was never made. The people don't accept it. It's not Torah. The one about bread, okay, if you live in that community and you accept it upon yourself, so you should continue doing it. But it didn't become a law. It has to be accepted by the people. And it has to work in this world in order for it to be part of Torah. If it doesn't work in this world, it's not part of Torah. It says the truth will spring out from the earth. It says why also, as a Gemara, Baba Metzia says, it's amazing. There was an argument in the yeshiva in the heavens, right? Up there with all the angels, the souls up there, they're arguing. What was the argument about? So one of the laws about the Metzora. And, what in this particular case where there is a certain doubt of what this happened with it, is it tahor or is it tameh? Is it okay or not okay? So what was the problem? God said it was okay. But the whole yeshiva, all of them, said it's not okay. So they're arguing with God. So they said, well, who's going to decide? Well, the expert in this field is Rabbi Bar Nachmani. So, okay, they told the angel of death, go bring him here. The angel of death went to get Rabbi Bar Nachmani. Yeah, but at the same time, the Sultan was also after him because some people had libeled him, saying that he wasn't paying his taxes and saying that as well. So they libeled him. So he's running from the Sultan, and the angel of death is chasing after him as well. So, but so the angel of death has to follow him out, and he's at this point he's at a swamp. But the whole time, he's constantly, his mouth is constantly saying words of Torah. He's reciting all the Mishnah and everything constantly. He won't stop. So the angel of death, he's made to be an angel of death, but he's still a mensch. There's certain things you can't do. Can't interrupt somebody in the middle of learning. So he's waiting, and I won't stop. So what do I do? So what did he do? He made a wind blow from a certain direction that it seemed to Rabbi that they're after me again. They're coming from the opposite direction I thought they're coming from. And he stopped for a moment, and then took him in. And right at that point, the Mishnah that he was learning, the words end up with tahor, tahor. It's okay. So the Masifta said, Rabbi Bar Nachmani says tahor. Wait, that's like God said tahor, but we still disagree. Anyways, the controversy went on, but the only one they said would be able to decide would be a person in a body down here in this world. And when you think about it, they're not discussing practical implication down here even. They're talking about how it applies in a very spiritual way, how the Torah is in the spiritual. Even they're talking about secrets of Torah. For us, the secrets. For them, that's what they learn. But for us, the heavenly way you would learn Torah in heaven. And even on something like that, you need a person who's here in the world to decide. You have the other case. The most famous case is that somebody came to Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, who was the greatest in his generation, the teacher of Rabbi Akiva. He was a Balchuva also. But Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, Rabbi Eliezer, I made this kind of oven. I made it in a certain way that can never become tameh. Everybody always has a problem. They're making the food that they want to give to a Kohen. They want it, or maybe they are Kohanim. They want it to be Tohor. And, every once in a while something happens and a spider gets in there and dies, and the whole thing becomes tameh. Well, this oven cannot become tameh. He worked it out in a certain way, and rings and so on. Okay, but the professor looks it over and says, "You're right. It's good. I'm giving my hechsher on it. Like, you can put my stamp on it." Rabbi Eliezer and Hyrcanus proofs. Okay, and it gets out there, and everybody's buying it. These guys making millions off it. The other sages find out about this. We got to look into this. And they look at it, and they don't understand why. We don't see what. Okay, it doesn't seem to work. Okay, so let's all get together and discuss it. So they get together in the yeshiva in Bnei Brak. Bnei Brak. Let's get together in the yeshiva there, Yavne, in the yeshiva in Yavne, and they start discussing. And Rabbi says, "I'll explain to you. He starts explaining. They don't get it. I don't understand. Right? That doesn't work. No, I'll explain to you." And he says, "But they're still not getting it. So you can't just agree because he's smarter than you." And who's arguing with him the most is Rabbi Yeshua ben Rabbi Hanania. Now, Rabbi Yeshua ben Rabbi Hanania, when Rabbi Eliezer came first time to learn from Rabbi Yochanan, he was 26 years old. And the only place that he was able to stay was in the home of Rabbi Yeshua ben Rabbi Hanania. And Rabbi Yeshua was assigned by Rabbi Yochanan, teach this guy. This guy's brilliant. He'll learn. So Rabbi Yeshua was the one who taught him until he was able to learn from Rabbi Yochanan. And then he became Rabbi Yochanan's student. And then he became like Rabbi Yochanan, was just amazed by this guy. So Rabbi Yeshua, who taught him to begin with, is the one arguing with him. And finally, they're all saying, well, we're going to take a vote and you're going to lose. And that's it. And like everybody who cooks things in your ovens, it's not going to be good, right? So he says, but I know I'm right. And he says, if I'm right, see that stream outside going down, stream going down the hill? If I'm right, the water in that stream is going to start going uphill. They look outside, the water's going uphill. What do we do now? I mean, if that isn't a heavenly sign, what is? So Rabbi Yeshua stands up and he says, maybe it's a heavenly sign, but the Torah's not in the heavens. It says in the Torah, Lo b'shamayim. It's not in the heavens, it's down here. So, okay, next thing you know, so Rabbi Eliezer says, well, look, see that carob tree out there? If I'm right, the carob tree is going to walk 100 meters in that direction. Carrot tree picks itself up, walks over, plops itself down. Its jaw drops. Rabbi Yeshua says, what's the difference? Torah is not in heaven. We don't take testimony from a carob tree. If the carob tree had some sort of argument to discuss with us, we'd listen to the carob tree, but it has nothing to say. Okay, so finally, Rabbi Eliezer says, if I'm right, the walls of this study hall are going to collapse on all of us, and the walls start falling in. And Rabbi Yeshua says, walls, you have no right to interfere in a discussion of the sages. So the walls didn't know what to do. Rabbi Eliezer says it's supposed to collapse. Rabbi Yeshua says it's supposed to stand straight. So they made a compromise. They stayed slanted. And I said they stayed that way slanted for generations. So finally, Rabbi Eliezer pulls out all the nuts. Says, I know I'm right. If I'm right, a voice from heaven will declare that I am right. A voice from heaven. And all the sages here, why don't you listen to my son Eliezer? Don't you know the halacha is always like him? Now what do we do? Now what do we do? Rabbi Yeshua says, where does it say anywhere in the books that we're supposed to pay attention to a voice from heaven? You know, like Moses heard voice, heard straight from God, right? But then it's closed book. In the Torah, it says that you go after the majority vote. That's all. Torah's not in that. They took a majority vote, and Rabbi Eliezer lost. So that's what it means. The Torah is like water. It comes all the way down here. And this is its place. And if an angel comes along or a voice from heaven comes along saying, in the name of God, it should be like, in other words, if you got a sandwich in front of you and you happen to be having lunch with a prophet, say Malachi is there, Yeshaya is there, whoever is there, and he says to you, something wrong with that sandwich, it doesn't seem kosher. And you ask the rabbi, and he checks into everything, it's kosher. It's kosher. The words from the prophet, you might want to investigate what's exactly going on in this place and so on, but you can't decide by prophecy what the halakha is going to be. Somebody can come and prove to you that God spoke to me and told me the halakha. It doesn't help. I mean, it may give us reason for looking more into it, but it doesn't help. One more, I'll tell one. There's a Gemara in Gittin. Who was it? So two rabbis were arguing in a certain case. Rabbi Eliezer says like this. Rabbi Nosson says like that. So one day, I can't remember who it was. One day, one of the rabbis meets with Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. Says, Elijah, I got a question for you. And I was learning, listening to the discussion of these two. Rabbi Nosson says like this, Rabbi Eliezer says like this. That's the tradition that they both argued with each other. It was never settled, and so on. So tell me, what does God have to say about all this? Oh, Elijah says he was just he was just discussing that up in heaven. God says that Eliezer, his son, says like this, and Nosson, his son, says like this. That's it. There was a philosopher, I don't know if he's still alive, Richard Nozick, a nice Jewish boy from the Bronx. And he sort of gave a whole new, some say a revolution in philosophy. He says, so the philosophy is not about answering questions, it's about explaining the discussion. And you see, that's exactly what's happening there in the Talmud. We're not saying he's right, it's the discussion that counts. And even God says, yeah, he says like this, and he says like that. That's the truth. Okay, so that's the point when we say the Torah is like water, is when it's not that it's mainly up there, but it also comes down here. No, this is its place. It's heavenly, divine wisdom, but this world is its place where it plays out. All this great descent and extreme investment is so that now anyone's thoughts can grasp God's infinite desire and wisdom. Even not just thoughts, even speech and action, which are lower on the spiritual ladder than verbal talk, can now grasp them and become invested with them. Now that the Torah and its mitzvahs clothe all of your soul's 10 faculties and all your 613 spiritual limbs from head to foot, your entire soul is literally wrapped up in a bundle of life with God, and God's light literally encompasses, closer from head to foot. This is the meaning of the verse, my rock, I cover myself within you, and like a shield, desire will surround you. You used to have these big, big shields. You could fit your entire body within a shield. That's what you went out to war with. So like a shield, desire will surround you. This rock and this desire is his desire and wisdom as they're invested within his Torah and its mitzvahs. But then you are wrapped up within God himself. Okay, so next week, as I predicted to begin with, going to take us 4 lessons. So next week we get to like the real punchline here, beyond heaven. God willing. See you all next week in Jerusalem. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. Thank you for paying attention.
Thank you.
Good talk.
Bye. See you next week.